So I want to introduce Adele Calhoun to everyone. Adele is the author of the book Invitations from God, the book that is really the inspiration and the template for the sermon series that we're in the midst of right now here at Broadway Church. So Adele, thank you so very much for being willing to interact with us. Now, Adele, it's not very often that I get to chat with the author of a book that I'm reading. So I want to take this opportunity to kind of pick your brain a bit and maybe for myself and for the people of Broadway to get some inside information. So tell me, what is the story behind the book? What inspired you to write it? What's the truth behind it all? How did it all start?
Well, it started because my husband and I moved from being pastors at a large church in Chicago on the staff to being senior pastors of a much smaller church in the Boston area. And we'd been there about a year, and I just kept seeing all the ways these people, busy professionals, were just overwhelmed with everything they were doing. Saying yes to coaching soccer, to being at every soccer game, to sitting on a board, to um, volunteering at the library, to being an elder, to and their plates were so full that sort of the one spiritual practice they did was maybe come to church, and it's like they have no space. They are saying yes to so many invitations, and there's this fundamental fear of missing out, FOMO. If I don't do it, I may never get asked again, and I don't want to miss out on anything. I want to go everywhere, meet everyone, do everything. And just thought, we have to have a conversation here about all these yeses and how all those yeses are no's to things and no's to things of God. And so I just started thinking, what would be good invitations for people to say yes to? And how could those invitations change the rhythms and the shape of their faith? So that's how it began.
So it started as a sermon series, turned into a book, and we're turning it back into a sermon series. So there you go. We're taking it back to its original form, is what we're
That's
doing here
right.
at Broadway.
That's right.
So, Adele, let me ask you, is an invitation from God just another way of saying a command from God?
So I loved your question, Darin. The thing about a command is I think it gets misunderstood so quickly as a compulsory requirement and a necessary condition for God to love you. And that's just not the case. God's eternally determined that in before we were born. We are unconditionally loved, and he set up the plan to show us how he loves us. And so for me, it's that the word command comes with a lot of baggage and uh, a lot of ought and should. And the ought and should of commandments doesn't have a lot of spiritual fuel. It doesn't give people what it takes to actually go the distance. Like I can feel, well, I should, maybe it's not yell at my kids, or I should be more patient with my spouse, or, I should eat in a more healthy way. And that should may get me moving for maybe 3 months. I find, at least for me, should goes for about 3 months, and then it's like, whatever. I can't do it any longer than that. But if I want something, if I want to run a marathon, I will get up when I don't feel like it, and I will do it because I have fuel, and that fuel is desire. And I feel like invitations themselves create a lot of momentum and desire. So I chose those words um, primarily because I wanted to create a different, um, maybe a different way for people to access uh, their relationship with God.
Yeah. So a command is more outside in, and an invitation more is an inside out kind of a thing, is what I'm hearing you say.
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah,
A command is you must do this. An invitation is I invite you, I welcome you to do this, I encourage you to do this, but the choice is yours.
that's right. And even the commands, when I think about the 10 mandates, or the 10 words, um, part of that is on a grander scale an invitation um, to see the world as God uniquely values it. It is an invitation into the heart of God. The people who live this way will represent me in the world.
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that. It's not so much represent, but represent. You're really accentuating what that word is meaning there. Well done. Now, do you have a favorite invitation from God, or are they like children where you have to love them all the same?
Well, I could tell you my favorite one for my husband is to the invitation to admit I might be wrong.
Yeah,
So,
I,
um,
I just am about to preach on that one. That really spoke to me.
yeah, that is a huge one in our family. And I'd say my favorite one is probably the invitation to practice the presence of people.
Yes. Yep.
And
We just
I also love the invitation to follow because it's so counter to the invitation to lead. So,
spoke. I think that was week 2 of the series, and I spoke on that one, and that was a real challenge for me because I said all my life I've been encouraged to lead. And no church has ever said, Pastor Darin, would you come here? We're looking for a follower. And so that was a tension I had to work out when I went through that chapter about the tension of leading and following. And
yeah,
we're called to do both at a level. But following, my big idea that day was the greatest leaders follow the greatest leader.
that's
Yeah,
it.
good. I got the approval of Adele on
Yeah,
that.
that's
Thank
right.
you. So now, Adele, here's what we're doing as a congregation. We've have purchased several of the books, and we offer them for sale at all of our campuses. And we encourage people to read them, or they can purchase them themselves online. But what we were doing is we're in the Bible class the week after a sermon is taught. The following week in the Bible class is 45 minutes devoted to unpacking the previous week's material from the book. That's how we're trying to get people to interact with the material. How do you think a person can best interact with the material from this book? What would you recommend someone do who wants to get the most out of the series in this book?
So when we did it as a sermon series, we had small groups doing just exactly what you're doing because one of the things that I know about saying yes to an invitation is that it's hard to say yes alone. So if I'm saying yes to the invitation to rest or and practice Sabbath, let's just lump those together. If I'm saying yes to that, it can be really hard to do that alone if everybody I know is, super busy on Sunday. And um, I remember one of the women in one of the groups came up to me after the week of doing rest and what rhythms are you going to change it? She was so excited. She said, I know some people are giving up all their uh, technologies on Sunday, but I gave up 2 hours on my cell phone, and that was huge. And I'm so grateful just for that 2 hours, just to know I wasn't going to look. So, people start where they are, but I want to say any of these invitations require practice, and it's a practice, not perfect. You
Right.
know?
Yes. Well said. Well said. Well, thank you, Adele, for taking the time to allow me to interact with you. And I just want to remind the people at Broadway Church, it's not too late to pick up a book. We're just roughly halfway through this series. Join with us, join the class out of this material that you can. And Adele, I want to thank you for taking the time to invest into the writing of this book. And thank you for taking the time to invest in the people of Broadway Church. God bless you.
And God bless you.
Thank you. God bless.